so many times you as a director just have to learn how to be calm and absorb.
Honestly, every genre has been done. Uh, every take has been done, because the only thing different in this entire thing is you and your take.
You got an acting offer pretty early on.
Worst decision of life, yeah, Smriti. I could have been a hero.
It was really hard. It was really hard because a couple of months, like, okay, where are my friends? So I was like, what happened? Please, somebody help me, love me.
Here we go to the nerd alert part. For the sake of brevity and for the sake of your understanding, I've taken the liberty to use a tool using steel plates. Really, I don't have a geometry box to make a chart. Do not laugh, please. Be kind.
Welcome to DialMForFilms. Writer, director, producer, entrepreneur, founding member of Women in Cinema Collective, also known as WCC, Anjali Menon grew up in Dubai in a business family. Her father, Mr. T.M. Nair, moved to UAE in 1959, one of the early Indians there, and steadfastly created a legacy of automobiles that is remembered even today. Despite the distance, her parents kept her and her elder brothers connected with their culture. They spoke Malayalam at home, celebrated all festivals with fierce authenticity, and business was more about creating opportunity, community, and giving back than about money. Anjali trained in Bharatanatyam for 14 years, and her natural pull towards stories and the stage blossomed in a house that kept the muscle for the arts flexed at all times. She did a master's in communication studies from the University of Pune in 1997 and master's in art and technique of filmmaking from the London International Film School in 2002. This is where she made her first short film, Black Nor White. The executive producer on the film was Asif Kapadia. The film screened on graduation night to rousing applause. It was also selected for the Palm Springs International Film Festival. Anjali moved back to India in 2003. She completed her first feature, Manjadikuru, in December 2007, but the film was released only 5 years later in 2012. By then, her first short, Happy Journey, as part of an anthology called Kerala Cafe, had already come out. She met dream collaborator Anwar Rasheed during Kerala Cafe and started writing Ustad Hotel for him. Work of Fate, Ustad Hotel and Manjadikuru released within a month of each other in 2012, and the world woke up to Anjali Menon. She won several awards for both films. Bangalore Days followed in 2014. It became Anjali's breakout film, and in the years that followed has acquired cult status. I can go on and on because Anjali's list of accomplishments is endless. And what she brings to the table cannot be articulated in a way that does full justice to her talent. But in the interest of time, we do want her to make her next film. It is time to pull her in. Anjali Menon, welcome to DialMForFilms.
Thank you, Smriti. Thank you.
Have I embarrassed you? have I kept...
Thoroughly and exhaustively. Yes, I must say that.
Have I at least accomplished that? But Anjali, listen, I know you don't do this often. I know that you're a very private person. So thank you so much for making the time to share your process, your methodology, your craft, and its evolution over the years with us.
Pleasure. For the very little that I have exercised it.
Anjali, I want to begin with your first film. I know that you had already started, thinking about writing, working on Manjadikuru, even before you came back to India. And you were very sure about the fact that you wanted to tell the story in Malayalam. The film was a journey for you both as an artist and as a person. You're a reverse migrant. It was an exploration into a culture that you experienced in a distant land, an attempt to read and write in a language that you spoke, and also to find your feet as an artist. So there were too many things happening at one time. I just want to understand that how did this journey begin? And when it began, and you came back in 2003. What were those 4 very eventful years like?
Well, I think any film student worth their salt will have a feature script in their head, and I was one of them. And I think I started writing Manjadikuru when I was at film school, and just hammering away, trying to do things. Whole feature format sort of is very daunting when you've worked mainly in shorts, and then at that stage it was just something I loved doing, trying to put together those characters, trying to create that sort of world which I was familiar with and I missed possibly. And like you said, as part of that phase, I had also made a choice to come back to India, and I chose to live here. The rest of my family does not, and it's just somehow I've always wanted to, and it sort of gave me the opportunity for me to really look at my cultural bearings and learn so much about Manjadikuru. Like the content of the film, the whole experience of it was very much homecoming, and to be able to engage with my own language in a way that I hadn't done before. All of that was very scary, but very very inviting as well, I have to say. So yes, as soon as I came back, I had sort of a whole flurry of developments in my personal life, and I met my husband to be. We got engaged. I lost my father. I got married. I moved cities. All of that happened over the span of about a year, and I'd really not taken the time for myself to process much of it, and I just very quickly sort of slipped into a shell for about 3 years from there, and it took me a while to get out. And during that time, I just wrote. That's all I did, and not just Manjadikuru. I wrote multiple things, and at one stage, I actually showed this particular script to a very well-known, well-respected writer, and he said, "Don't make this as your first film." So I was quite heartbroken, to be frank. And then I said, well, he should know what he's talking about. So I put it away and I started working on other stuff. And I would keep going back to this one every time I felt down. And it became like my go-to solution for anything else that I was doing. And now I wasn't writing for anyone to read. I was just writing for myself. And I think that in itself kind of changed the process. After that, I was very wary of showing it to anybody in the industry, because what if they said the same thing? And I really wanted to make this one as my first film. So I wanted to at the same time get advice about narrative, about as a narrative structure, whether it worked, and whether it worked in Malayalam, the language itself. And so, if not the industry, then where do I go? So I reached out to this wonderful person, great teacher called Kavalam Narayana Panikir. Panikir sir is a theatre guru. He is, he's so well known. He's been the vice chairman at the Sangeet Natak Academy. He's got a Padma Bhushan, revered in many, many spheres, but more than anything, revered for his complete dedication to our language and our arts. And for him to even touch my script, for me, that was a dream. So I tried to reach him, and he was so forthcoming with his advice and so generous with his time, that he just literally, kind of invited me into his home and into his work, and said, "Come over." And I sort of took the opportunity to document some of his work. So we traveled with his troupe, and a lot of things happened. He wrote lyrics for my film songs, and all of this gave me an opportunity to see his directorial process. He's a theatre director, a writer, a poet, a lyricist, a musicologist, a whole lot of things. And it really gave me a very up close and personal exposure to what I thought was very distant. And it was through him that I sort of realized that there were actually many latent things that I had never counted as strengths. And he really infused that kind of courage to say, go back, do your thing, you know what you need, don't worry, don't be so nervous, you don't have to take everybody else's opinion. If you know what you want to do, just go and do it. And I think that is what powered my journey to make that film. Frankly, that's what it is.
What you said was very interesting. I didn't have this as on my roster of questions, but I'm compelled to ask because when you're a first time director embarking on this journey and you've written something that you would like should be your voice out there, your first step out there, and you show it to somebody, and that person tells you, somebody very respected, and that person tells you that maybe you should not make this film, and then you quickly keep it away and start working on other things. What does it do to you? How does, now that you worked for 17 years, since film school got over, if you were to go back to that experience, or what went on inside you when the person told you that, maybe you shouldn't make this film and maybe it shouldn't be your first film, what happened? How did you process that?
See, I don't believe in this whole thing of, this sort of mystical writer that you are and you're so away from everything real. It's a very real thing. I want to make a film. I thought this was going to be my first film, and someone says, this may not be a good idea. And then I say, oh, okay, well, he knows better. So I put it aside. There is, of course, the heartbreak of characters you've nursed and, images you have in your mind. And, if not now, when will I get to do that? And if it's not this, do I have something else that compares? All of these questions come to you. And I said, let me put that away. I cannot just continue to be in love with them. So I just put it away. And I wrote some other stuff, which again, I found very engaging. But somehow, you kind of gravitate towards themes, towards the material that you relate to. And I think this choice of what is the subject of your first film, it is something that I discuss very often when I'm teaching, because a lot of people, when they're setting out to make that first film, you really need to ask the question, why are you making it? And first and foremost, for who are you making it? Because how invested are you? How much of yourself is invested in that film? And how long have you actually been working for it? It may not be just you may be working all your life to gearing towards that one film. So that kind of self-questioning is very important, I think, and that really helps orient oneself. And at one stage, when one has the conviction, what he was actually questioning was, the gentleman is someone I respect so much, and if he questions and I put it aside, that speaks of my conviction or the lack of it. So if I had the conviction, I would never have put it aside. So it took me time to find the conviction and say, no, I think this is what I'm going to do. So to be able to commit to that, despite advice that one gets, that I think is a growth in itself. So very often, when you're mentoring people and when you're engaging with their first film drafts and things, and I'd rather I put the script aside and say, why are you doing this? What is it about this character? Why sometimes you find very little of the people and their world experiences there in the films. And then I would like to encourage people to build bridges, bring themselves into the film. And I think that endows it with a richer spirit.
Anjali, you were moving back to India. You were coming here. You wanted to tell the story in a language that you spoke but didn't read or write in. You were entering a completely different ecosystem, right? And you wanted to make a film. And what were the first steps that you took to kind of acquaint yourself with the system? I know you've done a lot of workshops, a lot of labs. You've really, you believe in that process. But in those 4 years, while you were moving towards it, because I know that Manjadikuru, you stopped shooting for that. I mean, you finished shooting for it, I think, on the 1st of December 2007. That was when it all, came together. But in those 4 years, from raising finance to kind of pulling a crew together, from starting, your company, what are the first steps that you did to even enter the system, so to speak, because the country was also new to you. The city was new to you, everything was new to you.
It was, and I tried to reach out to people I knew within the industry, and it was a strange time. I have sat outside producers' offices waiting. I have sent my scripts and waited for months on end to just be told, oh really, you sent it? Oh okay, could you send it again? And all of that. I've written to filmmakers requesting to assist them, and it didn't work. It did not work. They were very well-meaning producers who would come back and say, "Well, here, good script. It's not the time for this now." Or and this was not even just Manjadikuru, mind you. There were different scripts that I had created, and I realized that there is really no way to break in. It's really tough. And I wasn't in a space where I was looking to assist. I initially did. But then I realized that this is, really tough. It isn't so easy to sort of just break in. And at that point, we didn't have any kind of a system. There was no social media. It was just a really difficult time. And I said, see, why am I actually waiting? I have done a fair amount of assisting abroad, and I have gained a certain amount of experience. I have the confidence that, if all of these things come together, some kind of a basic, decent narrative I might be able to put together. And then the rest of it is a leap of faith. So if I surround myself with the right collaborators, then that would possibly, help me. So I started to find those people. So it was just a very basic task of first finding that one person. You know how they say about, the first follower is actually the one who transforms a mad nut into a leader. I found that first follower and someone who came to me and said, can I assist you? And because he knew I was working on something, can I just, learn with you? And I said, great, come on board, you and me, we're a team. And the two of us, we just got going. This was a young man, Arvind Ashok Kumar. He was as green as I was. And we sat across a table, him on the other side and me on this side, and we started our work. And we went around looking for locations, finding anything. I started thinking of actors and all of that. All of this after the script is done. And I took about a year to do all of that. And I'd found a lot of my places. I'd started finding people I wanted to work with. And then it was about finding the money to put it together. So there was a certain amount of funds that I had secured. But then I wrote in, like a lot of people, I Googled and I found that NFDC was giving out a co-production deal. And it was the first of its kind at that time. And I applied for it. And I think they had some other projects, and ours was the only one which got selected. And so that was a big thing. That was the first big vote of confidence that someone thought, other than the two of us, someone thought that this was okay.
This was a good idea.
Yeah, so that was quite hard. I remember getting the notes of the panel which judged it. I mean, they didn't know who wrote it or anything. And the panel had Santosh Shivan, PK Nair, really, really big names. And it felt wonderful that those people had even read my script. That was fabulous. So at that stage, all of that really mattered. And that's how it started off.
Anjali, making a film is tough enough, but you didn't know that the toughest battle that you will fight to get your voice out there would be once the film is done. You were blindsided by certain things that you didn't see coming, almost gobsmacked by what happened. And I know that you finished the film. We spoke about it earlier in 2007. And because of these reasons, you only managed to get your film back in 2012 and released it. What did this unsavory experience teach you? How did you process this and move ahead?
One thing, that conviction that I was speaking of, I think that is the one thing that one has to hold on to. That is what it really taught me. And I realized that I can be quite mulish that way. I would not have thought otherwise, because there are, of course, there are areas in my life where I've had to be very stubborn and say, no, this is what I will do, and I hold on, and that is there. But when something like this, which is so outside, your control, but there are so many variables out there. And the situations we had certain issues which cropped up with our co-production, and eventually I had to buy the film back. I bought the film back and then completed it. And the the whole idea was everyone and their brother was telling me to move on. People say that to you, okay, this is one, move on, do another thing. Half the people tell you, okay, see, we told you films are not for you. You know, half of them said that. The other half would say, move on, do something else. But the very problem was that everybody else had moved on. And if I have also moved on, then there's going to be nobody to take care of that film or of those characters, or all that work comes to nothing. And then I have to start from a clean slate where the person sitting opposite me has no idea that I have been through this cycle once. So that was just not acceptable. That was not fair, not to just me, but to everybody who put their heart and soul together for the film. So on their behalf, I really had to just, dig my heels in and stand there and say, no, I will complete this. So I told myself I will not do another feature until I can bring this out. So there were certain opportunities, but I preferred to stick with the work I had already begun. And I remembered my dad. He used to tell me that geniuses finish things. So the most important thing is not just do thing and think that you're a genius, but damn it, finish it. And no matter what it took, I needed to finish that cycle. I'm a little crazy that way. Whatever, if I take up a course, a movie, anything, I have to finish it. That's important. I can't walk away halfway from a movie theater, even if it's a lousy film. I just can't do it. So that streak, I guess, played into this, and it taught me a lot. But I think destiny has certain plans as well, because it was when I was sitting and waiting for things to shape up that the opportunity to do Kerala Cafe came to me. And the reason I sort of was very happy to jump on board was this was not another feature. It was not going to take me away from Manjadikuru. It was a short. So, a short film is a format that I was far more comfortable with at that stage. And so I just sort of literally jumped into it very happily. And it was a privilege actually to be working with a lot of other very established filmmakers and to get an opportunity like that. So it was something I really enjoyed. And it was my first taste with the audience, to sit in a theater and hear how they respond. That was very special, and I really, it meant a lot to me because I had really yearned for it, to watch my film in a theater with an audience, and I had not got that. So it meant so much to be able to get that even in that little way. And soon after we bought it, I found I was pregnant. And we got Manjadikuru back. Within months, I was pregnant, and then, I was advised bed rest, and I wasn't, supposed to be traveling or working or anything. So there again, okay, another year goes by. So it was like that.
There are lots of young filmmakers and people who want to be in the industry on this call and watching this session. What would you advise them to do? Because the kind of trouble you got into with Manjadikuru, what would you advise them to safeguard? Because I know that in an interview you'd said that your grit as an entrepreneur and all those conversations, dinner time conversations about deals and about things, you plugged into a work ethic that your father had inculcated, that you'd heard about, and you were like, I'm not going to let this go, because you might say that my stake is 30% or 20%, but what you don't realize is that my stake actually is 120%, because this is my creation. I've made this. So what is it? What do you think a young filmmaker, how can they safeguard themselves for a situation like this?
See, I at the end of the day, anything can happen. I don't think there's any safeguards you can sort of permanently employ. I would have done it if I'd known it. But it's that, when you say it's my film, that's because you're taking the responsibility for it. It is not because you have created it just by yourself. You're actually taking on the responsibility on behalf of these 100 people who've worked with you. You're the custodian of it. You're the safekeeper. So for that, you say, okay, we have to hold this safe. And I might, my whole journey, my wait of 4 years may not make sense to anybody else. But it makes sense to me. I can live with it. For me, I think I would only say do things that you can live with. I could not have lived with walking away from it. Whereas I know many others who would have just done that the next year, they would have made another project and moved on. And then you wouldn't have to say that, in so many years, you made only these many films. They would have made films every year. So there are people who have that journey, and there's no right and wrong. It's to each their own. They might have seen that time as a waste. They might have seen, it differently from what I did. So I think we should all know what we can live with. Those our choices are based on that. But other than that, I would just say, just you, this whole thing, as you come in very green, very naive as a filmmaker. I think you should always have your practical hat on, always consult legally. All of that you really have to put in place. You shouldn't go with the trust that things are like film school, where, people will be good and they will be fine and they will all care about the project as much as you do. No. I think it's that way. It's a journey. You have to be prepared to take it up yourself, even if no one else cares. You need to be the one to push things ahead.
Anjali, thank you for saying this because, they're really, really bright, amazing young people who want to be filmmakers and storytellers. But I think the common perception always is that, the business of it and the deal making of it and the practical aspects of it need to be left to somebody else. But I can't stress on this enough that you have to keep your ears and eyes open because you cannot be blindsided. You need to prepare yourself to safeguard your project, your labor of love on every front. So moving on, like you said, those 4 years were not wasted. You did Kerala Cafe and you met Anwar Rasheed.
Yeah.
Who was also making one of the films in the anthology. And that's where the relationship began. And it's such an important collaboration in your life. Tell me about how the two of you connected and how did it lead to you writing Ustad Hotel?
Well, I only heard of his name. I knew he made these big blockbuster films. And at that point, most filmmakers of that generation were sort of much older than me, and they were not people I could be on a first name basis with, not at all. And when Kerala Cafe was made, I was very surprised by the vibe because the industry in Kerala that way is very it's almost very much on a very personal basis. I think it's because it's so much of an indie film space that on the day that the producer, Mr. Ranjit, he invited all of us into his home to come and pitch stories and discuss things. I wasn't really ready for a pitch. I just turned up thinking we'll be briefed, and he said, "Okay, what's your story? What's your story?" And everybody was sort of coming up, and so I just sort of made something up and said it. And there was this guy Anwar there, and I think we were among sort of the younger in the lot, and so we just sort of got introduced and we kept in touch during the making of the films and everything. And finally, when the film came out, my favorite short in that lot is Anwar's short. It was a beautiful short film called Bridge, and I think it really showcases his talent as a filmmaker. And I was really taken up. I was very impressed and liked it a lot, and told him so. And since then, we kind of kept in touch. What are you doing? What are you writing? That kind of thing was happening. And at one point, when he called up and said, I was just bouncing off some stories. And I mentioned this one story to him about this grandfather and grandson on the seaside. And he was suddenly just, I think he just went alert and said, "Can you write it a little bit? Maybe like, just a small sketch of it." And I said, "Yeah, I can." He said, "Then maybe can I come over?" I was in Kerala those days, and I said, "Yeah, sure, why not?" So he came over in about a week's time, and I had put down some notes, and he read it, and he gave me a little advance, and that's it. We were working on the film. It was as simple as that. And what I did not realize is that Anwar had till then directed, I think, about 3 films, and each of them were huge blockbusters. So he was
Blockbusters, they were huge.
Yes, it were all, he ran 150 days in the theatres, and he was working with all the top stars and all of that. And he had stopped doing that for about 4 years. And then Kerala Cafe happened. Now, I did not know that he had wanted to move on to a different kind of narrative. And he was waiting for something like that to turn up. So he'd been going through different scripts and meeting different people and all that. So for me, what looked very easy was something that he had been
He was
patient.
striving towards.
So it was just a beautiful time that we connected, and so I had a great time sitting at home because while I was in Kerala that time, I was actually pregnant and at my mom's home, and I had been advised to rest completely. So
You
I
were
was
in Calicut, right? You were in Calicut at your mom's. Yeah.
in Calicut. So I was really being pampered. And Calicut is this lovely place where people are so warm and hospitable, and especially if you're a pregnant woman, then you're just surrounded by food. I think all of that came into the script. That's what happened. So yeah. And I had my baby about a month earlier than expected. So I had finished the first two acts and not done the third act. I just, went and had my baby. And I remember telling my husband, I may be the one having the baby, but I'm sure Anwar's having the labor pain. He's wondering, what the hell will happen to my script. So then I wrote the third act after the baby. So, my son was born and I went back to work on the seventh day. And yeah, just that's how it got done. By the time I think my baby was, yes, exactly 3 months old, 90 days. You're supposed to, follow the traditional thing and everything. And 91st day, I flew to Chennai with him and my husband, and we pitched our tents there to finish the post production on Manjadikuru,
Post-production.
while Anwar was finishing the post production on Ustad Hotel. It was happening parallel. We released within a month of each other, and it was just it was a great time. That was 2012.
Anjali, you were very determined, once Ustad Hotel and Manjadikuru came out. Manjadikuru got a lot of critical acclaim, but it did not do well at the box office. And that really, yes, and that really, I think it had a profound impact on you. You've spoken about how it was received, and of course it was also received the way it was because the journey was truncated. Manjadikuru is also not, unfortunately, for everyone who's watching, is not available anywhere for anybody to watch right now, but Anjali is working on it, and I'm hoping that you can see that beautiful film because it's just incredible. You were very determined that the next film that you make, you're going to make a film that reaches out to audiences, and is received in a completely different way than Manjadikuru was. So when you were working on Bangalore Days, when you started working on Bangalore Days, what are the things in your process that you altered? Did you alter anything in your process? Because you've written all your films. You're the writer director on all your films. When you take a decision like this, where you say that, this is whatever I create next is going to be created in such a way that it is received a certain way, how does that alter your creative process?
When we decide the content of our films, I think we also need to take into consideration where we are at, because we are also evolving as people, and what our need is from this thing that we're doing, we're making. For me, that whole little episode with Kerala Cafe was very important. It was the first time I got to sit in front of an audience that is applauding dialogue which is written. That is applauding the characters as they're going through the journey. And that for me somehow it struck a chord. I really engaged with that thing, and it felt it felt great. I have to say that it was something that gave me a high, and I realized that I'm liking this. I'd like to work a little more in this space to be able to engage with them enough. I had a wonderful actor in Kerala Cafe, Jagadish Srikumar sir, who worked with me, and we were at this film festival, the Abu Dhabi Film Festival, and he sat right next to me. In all his years of experience, it was his first film festival, and while the film was going on, people started clapping at the end of our segment, and he turned around and told me, I won a few awards by then, and he said, "You know what? the real award is not what you go on stage and collect. The real award is this applause that you get. And that just really stayed with me. Unfortunately, soon after that, he had a very nasty accident, and he's not able to speak anymore, and he's in a wheelchair. And it stays with me, those words that he said, and I really wanted that again. So when I wrote Ustad Hotel as well, the way we crafted it, and Anwar's strengths are in that area. He was able to, when I write something, he was able to tell me that, this would be good in this direction. Do you want to work at that? So that kind of exchange between us was helpful. Somewhere along the line, while I was writing Ustad Hotel, I had not seen any of his other work, and I'd only seen the short film, which I loved. I happened to see something on television which Anwar had done before, and it was this full-on masaledar. I got a little worried, but oh my God, is this what he's expecting out of me? So I just went and called him up and I said, Anwar, I just sort of turned on the television and I saw this movie. I think you made it. It's sort of the kind of writing that you want me to do. And there was silence on the other end of the phone. And he suddenly says, have you no other work? Don't you have a script to write? Please go write that script. Why are you watching this television?
Why are you watching TV? They're calling me on my...
I don't want you to be watching any of those films. I just want you to focus on the script that you're writing, and that is it. Don't think about anything else. Okay, then I was in a better space there. So I had the freedom to do, what I was trying to do, and he gave wonderful feedback, which really helped the film. And in the middle of this, Anwar would share with me his Flickr account where he started collecting pictures, just for reference and all of that. And I realized the explosion of color in those pictures. And it was amazing because that's another person's interpretation of your material. And that was a very interesting process for me to learn from as well. So he was visualizing it in a very different way. And it was definitely visualized in a far more powerful way than I was expecting. And to be able to understand that even while I was writing really helped. So the infusion of a kind of humor, and I remember when I initially wrote it, there's a certain way the film starts, Ustad Hotel, there's a slight sarcastic humor, wit space there, and I was a little worried, is this going to work? Are we sure? Do we want to carry that kind of humor through? And till then I'd been writing in English and he was reading it in English. And then I wrote it in Malayalam, and I used the accent which is in Calicut, which is a very how do we say, it's a very fluid form of language, a very warm style of speaking, very casual style of speaking. And once he saw that, he was sorted. He was like, this is it, we're doing this. And we were good to go that way. So that kind of freedom to try those things was very empowering for me. And it's a great ride when you're getting to do this and somebody else is directing it, because you're safe in a way, because his hands, I trust him. So the material is going to be dealt with carefully. And I think that really empowered me to move on to Bangalore Days. And after this sort of thing with Manjadikuru, and nobody had seen it, by then I was in a space I wanted the audience to watch my films, and nobody had really seen Manjadikuru. It ran for, 25 days or something. People wrote about it online, but it was not the kind of reception that I really wanted. And that I really was thirsty for material which I could engage with the audience. And it was really funny. People would come to me during that entire time. The whole industry, there was so much of a welcoming thing after Ustad Hotel, and everybody wanted me to write scripts for them. So then I would ask them, so who's going to direct this? And some of them were, very well-known directors and all that. But some of them would be people who are completely new directors. So then I would say, but why them? Then, I can direct it, right? So they said, no. Yeah, so, they'll say, no, you write it, that will be great. Because, we don't want a Manjadikuru, we're looking for an Ustad Hotel. So it was just so clear. They wanted my writing. They did not want my direction. So that's a challenge thrown in your face. So what is it, that I cannot deal with that kind of material myself? Is that what it is? Then I love a challenge anytime. It's almost a dare. Then that makes that kind of thing which really energizes me. Then great, let's try that. That's the thing that comes in. So when even the Bangalore Days idea, I was thinking it for a friend. I just had my baby and everything. So it's not a sensible time to go direct a film. So I was just again bouncing it with Anwar, and he just turned around and looked at me and he said, "You're giving this to somebody else?" I said, "Yeah, I was thinking of doing this," and he said, "No." He said, "You should direct this." Not even practical to do. He said, "No, you direct it, I produce it. Let's make this film. That's it." So it just doesn't sound. I was a mother. I was feeding my baby, for heaven's sake. It's not even a time when you think about these things. You can't hold a single thought in your head for more than 40 seconds. So I said that I'm not really sure. And he said, "No, but you can't give this to somebody else. You have to direct it. Actually, this is your humor. This is your thing." And I thought about it, and finally I said, "Well, I'm getting an opportunity. And this is somebody who knows my work, who has faith in me. He knows how I respond to stuff. I remember times when I would be, with my baby at a dinner with family friends, and Andrew would call up and say, "Anjali, I'm shooting the scene, but things have changed. This has happened. So can you rewrite the scene?" And I'm with my baby at this dinner, so I go to the hostess and I say, "Can I have a room somewhere?" And she'd be like, "Oh, you want to feed the baby? Yes, yes, come." And I'm like, "No, actually, I need to write a scene." So she would escort me in, and I would be writing it and sending it back to him. And that kind of, we had that kind of rhythm between us. So it just seemed to be very sensible to do this. And so, fine. So we took the risk, jumped at it, and he was just very clear about one thing. He said, "This is, the subject is something he loved," and he said, I'm really keen to make commercial films. That's what I'm looking at." And that was the only way that I saw this film too. So it, I think, was a good time. It was a good time once again to come together.
I want to go back a little bit to something that you pointed out earlier, that you prepare very meticulously for every film that you make. There are storyboards, there are character arcs, everything is put on paper, everything is very well documented. And when you made Happy Journey and you made Manjadikuru, you came away a little dissatisfied with what was, not that you didn't like it was your vision on screen, but there was a very clear learning that came from that. You want to talk about?
Smriti, I think the connectivity isn't great, so I'm losing the end of your question.
Yeah. Actually, I was saying that both going through.
Okay, I think the question was around the change in process of how the make. I can't hear you now. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
I'm so sorry, because
you were asking about the change in process from.
Yes, because the thing is that, there was, when you were making it, you realize that, everything that you put on paper, because you do prepare very thoroughly. Everything is storyboarded to the last T. If we were to bring up a couple of images from Kerala Cafe, if we were to just see those images here, we'll see that your storyboards and what you got on screen are completely identical. This is of course a storyboard and a shot from Happy Journey, and when you came away from both experiences of Happy Journey as well as Manjadikuru, you questioned something about your process, had a conversation with a person that you'd studied with who's also a director, and something shifted in your process. Would you like to speak a little bit about that?
Sure. In fact, it didn't happen after the two films. It happened during the making with Manjadikuru, actually. It's, your first film is the one you prepare the most for, I think. And like you said, I had adopted this complete film school approach where you prepare and you prepare and you prepare. The first 2 weeks we were shooting with children. So, with children, the beautiful thing is that you set a frame for them and you allow them to move in it. And they are very obedient that way. They do not cross those boundaries. And it's very much in the space that you have envisaged. Now, I shot for 2 weeks and I saw my footage and it was looking exactly like my storyboard. And I was bored to tears because I thought something else would happen and nothing is happening. So it's like, what am I doing? Something isn't working here. So I called up a friend, Sakit Chaudhary. Sakit was my classmate. Sakit had just made his film Pyar Ke Side Effects. So he had done a film before me. So I didn't know, anyone in that space other than him. So I called him up and I said, listen, something's going wrong here and I don't know what it is. So he said, what's the problem? And I said, this my storyboard is looking at my frame. So he's like, so what's your problem? So I said, no, I don't know, there's something is not there in it. The energy, I don't know why it's not happening. And he said, are you controlling things too much? Or are you leaving space for whatever's happening within the frame to surprise you? And I was really sort of, surprised by that question. And I realized maybe that was the problem. Maybe I had planned everything to such an extent that I'm not allowing anything to surprise me. And any variable, I was maybe pushing it out and not utilizing it within the frame. So the minute we had that conversation, I said, I should start making room for this. I should just, move things around. And there, that process started, where I started pulling stuff out which I had planned just to surprise the actors who've rehearsed these scenes and learned their lines. You take away one element and they're suddenly, all over the place a bit, and then they start responding to whatever's energy is created there. And I felt that gave us a lot more free-flowing energy in the frame. And the rest of the film, I think, went, into that kind of a process. So I felt much happier with that because I thought it was taking things one step further from what you had planned for. And that I thought was very rewarding for everybody concerned. It also gives room to your technicians and people to collaborate more. And again, for that film, my DP was Pietro Zerka. Pietro is he's from Switzerland and he's trained at the AFI. So he was also very used to the whole storyboarded, very clean, clear process. So he worked very well with that. In prep, we worked very closely together. But this slight sort of moving things around was really helping everyone. And that was a big learning for me. I realized when I work with Kavalam sir as well, that he has a technique of doing this, of changing things, of shifting small things which would alter the rhythm of the scene. And that infuses a fresh energy into it every time you perform it. So you find a new interpretation, you find a new thing a character can do, a new prop that can be engaged with, that kind of thing. So I tried to do more and more of that in the films. By the time we got to Bangalore Days, what happened is that in my head, there was a certain kind of film. And I don't think the production really realized that they bought into a vision which was a little beyond the budget and, all of it. So we had to literally pull words from, all over the place. And when we were doing it, they... I think a lot of them thought I was completely cuckoo. Because what is this? Racing and that and this, and, too many things in one film. And they kept saying, but this is not how it's done. And I kept saying, it's okay. And we just kept going with it. And there again, I learned that from my technicians, I realized this very, systematic way was not always working for everybody. They wanted to collaborate, but this was kind of standing in the way. So I used to have a little black book that I would carry with me all the time, with stuff drawn in it and everything. after a point, I realized this wasn't working. So I chucked my black book. I would leave it at home. I'd sit up at home, doing my stuff, but not drag it to set. So I knew what I had, in my mind, but it gave everybody else room to do what sort of they wanted also. And I think that enriched the film. And very often, we wanted to do things which we didn't have permissions for, which we didn't have access to. So we were really on the ball. And there was some way that I had to sort of make this film and have the narrative. So it was about responding to whatever was going on around, which keeps you alert in a very different way. And I think that's fabulous to have that, to be able to look around and find opportunity in things to tell the story. I remember during our conversation, I was telling you at that time when,
The free hugs.
yes, the actors respond to that. Actors really respond to that. So when they've really gotten into character and everything, with Dulquer and Niven and Nazria, they were really getting along. They really had that kind of vibe between them, and they were on the roads driving the car, doing those mad things in the car. So we were in another vehicle with walkie-talkies, one walkie-talkie in their car, another walkie-talkie in ours, and the most primitive way, shooting this sort of sitting in an Omni van. We didn't really have the way, we couldn't put a grip gear on those antique cars, and there was no way to shoot it in any other system. So this is what we did. On the way, we see these people, who were standing there with boards of free hugs. So I'm just telling them on the walkie-talkie, hey, stop the car, hug them, do what you want. And whoop, and we all did it, and we just got it on camera. So it was a lot of on the go stuff, and I think when all of that was matched with other stuff which was controlled, the film's energy rose. I'm more and more tempted to attempt that kind of filmmaking. Actually, that
So-
really speeds things up.
So basically, what you started to do was, it's not as if you started preparing less. You would prepare yourself enough so that you can allow room to breathe in your process for everyone to come in and kind of accept that. I also wanted to go back to Panikkar sir, because he is a very big influence in your process, and he used to follow the philosophy of, and you're one of those rare directors who gives equal weightage to actors, in terms of bringing a narrative alive. And you said that there are three main collaborators to bring the story alive, which is the writer, director, and the actors. And you believe in the philosophy of Kathapathram. And you've spoken about it as well. And there's a very interesting process, Anjali, that you follow, which I read about, where you said that, first they start asking me questions, and then I start asking them questions, and they start answering. They start telling me about the character. And what you also do is you do workshops with them, then rehearsals. And in those workshops, you get them to do scenes that are related to the film, that are related to their characters and narratives, but they're not in the film, right? So it has some sort of an effect. Can you tell me how, and you've been from Manjadikuru onwards, you've been working with, in Kerala Cafe, you worked with Nitya Menon. In Manjadikuru, you worked with very big actors, and you also worked with Prithviraj. He was there for a tiny bit at the end. So you've been working with seasoned actors. You've been working with really good actors. How did you develop your process as you went along, as far as actors are concerned?
With actors, I have been very blessed. Actually, I've had wonderful actors to work with. Right from Manjadikuru, the kind of trust that I've got from legendary actors like Tiligan sir, Murli sir, Urvashi, they're all people whose movies we have grown up with.
Yes.
And I have tremendous respect for their craft. It's something that it's a blessing to be, to have had the chance to work with all of them. And in that film, one thing I realized is that actors anyway, for that matter, I think they really respect directors who respect their process, who give them the space for that process, who cherish their process. I think that mutual respect is very, very important. It's that they respond to when that awareness is there, that is respected and that is cared for. then I found that they bloom. They surrender completely to the character. And that is what we're seeking, right? At the end of the day, what I'm looking for is not that one perfect take. No, I don't know. See, my journey does not start from point A to point B, knowing that I want to get to point B. No, I don't know what my journey is. When you're modeling a bit of clay, you don't really know that this is what you're going to make. You're in a way responding to everything that's happening, and you end up making something, right? And in that way, I would just like to nudge them towards moments of honesty, which we catch on camera. Those moments of honesty is what will bring alive our world. And when it comes to actors, a lot of these people, they read the scripts and they understand what it is about the character that we are trying to convey, and they fill it with their own subtext, which evolves beautifully. Some others, each of them have such different processes, so there is no one process I have actually. It changes according to who the actor is, and with that actor, depending on how they feel comfortable, how they imbibe the material, some people like to talk a lot about it, some people do not need any engagement about it, some people want you to read them through every scene. Some people just like to read themselves. So it's all very different. But at the end of the day, it's just about empowering them with enough understanding of the script and of their characters and their backstories, and allowing that to do. So that's all my job is. So when it comes to workshops, it's much more about getting them comfortable in a space with a new group, because our actors also tend to go from set to set to set. They're doing so much work that they really have no time to orient themselves. So this is about just getting them comfortable with the crew and the cast. And my crew as well comes into the workshops. So you'll be sitting next to an art director or your DP and doing whatever we're doing. So everybody's part of it. It also helps the crew, develop a certain sense of respect for what is being done. Acting is not an easy thing. People just assume, yeah, it's the easiest thing to do. No, it isn't. And it calls for a certain, you're exposing your innermost self. And for them to be able to get that confidence, we need to, create that environment. So the workshop is about getting them into that space. That's all. About doing the scenes, I rewrite unnecessarily and necessarily. So there's anyway so many scenes lying around that you can just take anyone and use it for rehearsal.
I'm coming back to the rewriting. I'm coming back.
So it's one where there are often scenes which I write but I'd never put into the draft. So just for me to understand how these characters might have interacted. Just to give you an example, when we had Bangalore Days and we needed to get the chemistry of the cousins. So for the workshops, what we did is we acted out scenes of the three of them interacting. Okay? And these scenes were to give them collective memories, which they had when they go back into the film scenes. They have a shared history. They have a shared memory of that rehearsal and of what we did together back then. Do you remember that? That kind of thing was there. And that, I think, enabled them to sort of open up with each other and fool around. And I think just you lose inhibitions and you lose all of those things which fetter you otherwise. And between, I think Niven and Dulkar had never met. It was the first time that they met at our workshop, and they were both a little, they were wondering how is it going to be. But from the first minute, they just sort of, it just really was smooth sailing. It went really well. Same thing for Prithviraj and Nazria. At Koode, they had to be siblings, and then again, we'd been interacting so much on the phone and everything. From day one, I mean, from the first day, they both switched on to one side and started pulling my leg together. So I think it's just about just allowing them to get there. That's all.
Anjali, you do. There is another thing that you do which is very interesting, that when you write, you never write with actors in mind. It's only when you know that this is the person I'm going to cast in the film. And your casting process is also very unique, which is that you never cast anyone until you meet them and have a conversation with them or a series of conversations with them. And then once the decision has been made that this person is going to play this character, you actually go back and rewrite some of the material, taking little things from what the actor actually likes. For example, in Fahad's case, you found out that he's a dog lover, and
I have to say, in Fahad's case, it didn't happen like that.
like that. Okay.
I wanted to give Das a certain tool to be able to, you know, display his affection, to be able to externalize how sensitive he was within. And for me, an animal lover is a very special kind of person, and that would have been a great tool. So I had this sort of semblance of a scene in my mind, and I called him up one day and I said, "Listen, are you comfortable around dogs? Is that something that you..." And he just says, "You don't know this about me?" What? He says, "I take my dog to set." You know, that was news to me. I had no idea. So he turned out to be this complete dog lover. I said, "Hey, then now nothing's stopping us." And so I went about writing all of that. For Fahad, it was just a lucky coincidence that happened.
Got it.
Yes, it empowered me to write even more because I knew he would be comfortable doing all of that. That definitely worked. But yes, usually with the actors, it's not anything else. It's not about what they like, but it's about giving them some identifiers, some to, some little pegs that they can hold on to when they are becoming that character. Because if there's a seed of something that they feel, you know, within, then that will help them explore the rest of the characteristics. Like we were saying, it's Kathapathram. Patram means vessel. Katha is story. So this, you know, Kathapathram is character. When an actor is, you know, becoming that Kathapathram, the story flows through them. So they are the biggest tool. And you can let go of everything else you have, but you have a camera and you have an actor, that's it. That's all you need. That surrender is supreme.
Anjali, I also wanted to talk about Where is the Soul? I know that every time Anwar works with you, he definitely comes close to a labor pain situation.
Oh God.
But this is you, right? This is you a month before Bangalore Days was supposed to go on floors, right? You kept on thinking that there is for everyone else this was going really well. Anwar was really happy. He thought everything is done. People have cracked it. But there was something that kept bothering you about the story, about the script, and you kept on thinking that you need to fix something, right? And then you started fixing it a month before shoot, and the final draft, post all the rewrites that you did, was ready only a week before shooting. What happened? Why did you give in to this instinct? And frankly speaking, I'm impressed because there are creators who've come on to Dial M and confessed that they didn't, they kind of thought about this in retrospect, but maybe when they were making the film, they didn't fix this, but you did. First of all, what do you need to have on board to kind of take a decision like this? And what enables a decision like that? Because there's a lot at stake. There's money that's being borrowed, the actors who've been informed, the script has been given to everybody. So first of all, the process of it. Secondly, when you change things and it's only a week from shoot, what kind of prep do you need to do in order for you to put that into place and also make the deadline?
Frankly, you have to have a bunch of very patient and trusting collaborators. In this case, be it my actors, be it my producer, be it my DP, all flew with me, which is why I could do that. Otherwise, this is what is there is working for everybody and it's good and it's fine and there you go. I remember I was writing this and the second half was something that I consistently had trouble with, writing that thing. The first half has actually remained the same since I think the third draft. First half hasn't really changed. But the second half kept changing completely with every draft. And already I think we were on draft 7 or something when we were going into prep. And but I think I would have written some 12 kinds of second halves for that film. But we went into prep, locations are locked and everything is done, and I'm still twiddling my thumbs, feeling very, very, very nervous. One thing that I think as a director, what I bring on board is my instinct. A lot of my work is around instinct. And when the instinct is raising a red flag somewhere, then I have to listen to it, because all the rest of the work that follows is also going to be based on instinct. So if there's something troubling you there, then it's very difficult to build on that. And when I sort of handed the script out, people had gone into prep and everything, and I think this was about 3 weeks before shoot, when I turned to my producer and my TP and I said, guys, this is something is not okay for me here. And that shot that you have is something that Anwar took on his phone when he came home one day, and I had scrawled all over my notice board, and this angry scrawl was there, and he started laughing. I said, why are you laughing? I'm traumatized here. And you're writing a commercial film. That's how it is. You're not going to find the kind of soul and connect you want between Manjadikuru. You're not going to find that here. This is a commercial film, so this is it. This is how it is. I said, no, but why does it have to be like that? I mean, I'm just not feeling, comfortable in my gut. And he laughed at me, took a photograph and emailed it to me, and then went. I was sitting there still fretting, and then I told him a couple of days that, can you please trust me? I want to change the script. And I remember I said this and he sat down.
He remembered Ustad Hotel.
He was like, what? So I said, yes, this is somehow not working for me, but I will not change the actors. I will not change the locations. I will work within all the production plans which have been made, but let me change the script. Let me just do that. And fortunately, him and my TP, they came on board and they said, it's okay. You do the thing. As long as these big things are not changing, they had the faith in me. And then the actors, I remember telling Niven the new second half, and Niven was very carefully listening to me. And then he realized that it had changed completely, and he looked up at me and he said, so it's just changed completely. Well, yeah, it's changed. And he said, I love it. I really like what's become. So thank God everybody responded like that. So it was great. Yes, that kind of faith is what it takes. But I think this listening to your instinct is very important. And there have been times that I haven't, and I've suffered for that. So I think this is one of the positive examples. That's all. I think we all have instances where we haven't listened, and then you would really
Knowing at you, yeah.
Yes, it stays with you, and it stays with you even when you're watching that film finally. So there are many examples of that, and I think we should just keep learning as we go.
Anjali, you changed. I know that you tinkered around, tinkered around is a very sort of light way of putting it, but you changed a lot in Aju and Sarah's track, and that also altered things around the two of them, of course. And then while editing, Kutan's entire voiceover, I think, altered. What is it like? Bangalore Days is something I'm not the only one. I keep revisiting. I know a lot of people revisit that film, and it connects on so many levels. And every time I've watched it, I've discovered something new, in the film. I just wanted to find out from you, what did you change in the film?
There were a fair amount of things, actually. It was not just Sarah and Aju. Sarah and Aju was a big part of it. I actually written this whole track of Sarah in a wheelchair in an earlier draft, and we put it aside. It wasn't working for some reason, and she was not in a wheelchair in the draft that we were working on. So I changed that whole thing and brought this back. Another very significant part that changed was about Kutan and his father.
Oh my God!
The whole Goa aspect and all of that. And even in the Das Divya story, there's a fair amount that theirs didn't change too much. But by the time all this sort of got tweaked together, there was another fairly important character, and there was a story around Aju's life where we were just not able to find the right location. There needed to be a space, and not able to find that location. So I had to quickly take whatever that character was doing and distribute it among the cousins. But that actually worked for the better because it brought the cousins closer together, and their characters were enriched. And so yeah, I think there's a lot of luck also involved, how things shape up, and how things do. So no matter what prep we do, yes, I like to prep like a mad person. For me, if an AD is if an AD really loves this film and loves me, they will prep. So it's that. So all that prep, but at the end of the day, it has to be to take us to that one moment when we will fly. And you cannot prep to fly. There you can only surrender. That's it. And allow whatever it is to happen. So
It's a leap.
yes, even if everything is beautifully choreographed, I think now I have learned that it is up to me, it is my responsibility to shuffle the energies, to do something else, to make these small adjustments which change performances. So even during takes, you may see, I don't know, 8 takes or something, and we tend to have a lot of okay takes. So it's not that I don't like to decide then and there. There are people who do the spot edits where they decide, immediately they put it together. I do not like to do that because that is a different process. You reinvent the whole story in the edit. But to be able to have these multiple takes which offer each one a little different, that is the thing. So by making these small adjustments, my take 2 will be very different from my take 8 because I've gone and shared a new bit of information with the actor. So he's responding to that information more than anything else. So maybe that is the one which I will go for. So those things are very important. So I try to prepare not just what is on paper and what everybody else can prepare with, but I'm also trying to think what is it that I can do, what is the little meddling that I can do which will unsettle everybody and which will make them, have to be on the ball and to respond then and there. So it changes for every film. For the last film, for Koode, I was warned that I'd worked with Prithvi before, but he, in his films, he has a tendency that he has a photographic memory. So he knows his lines sort of, completely. Not only his lines, he knows the lines of everybody in that room. So, the idea of someone knowing their lines like that and then reproducing it, how original can it get? At the end of the day, that's a little limiting sometimes, I think. So I never gave him his Malayalam script. I gave him his lines in English. So he knew what had to be said. He knew what everybody would say, but he had to make his own words and verbalize them. And it would be only during the rehearsal time that he would get something that he can refer to. And that kept it light, that kept it very, very spontaneous. And I think that mattered. So it changes performances a bit then. And every actor, like I said, works very differently. Some people like Jagdish Kumar sir, not one take will be like the next. He will do something completely different, which you get completely surprised by. So that's what every actor brings a different thing to the table.
Anjali, just out of curiosity, and I'm sure a lot of people want to know this because you're so deeply invested in the process of an actor, and you really, as a creator, aid and abet that, And in Bangalore Days, you managed to work with people who are now superstars. They have a journey that is that is just beautiful. They've thrived, grown, done material which everyone can be proud of. Can you individually tell us what their process is like a little bit? Because they do talk about your process very, very, they think you're a really generous creator that allows them to really blossom.
I don't know. I think
that
the last I checked, I think the adjectives go from make me feel completely safe, liberates me, is excruciating to work with. So
none of the people who think that you're excruciating to work with are at least chatting with me as yet.
No, but then I am sure I am. So, I don't take that away from them. But what, see, like I said, each of them is very different and very special. I am so proud of their journeys. I can't tell you that, it's just really special to see how they've really gotten out there and done work that, like you said, everybody's so proud of, which is really cool. If I mean, do you want to ask me names and I can just share?
Yeah, actually, if you can tell us about Parvati, Nivin, Fahad, Dulkar, and also Prithvi, because the reason I ask about Prithvi is that Prithvi does such different material, and Koode was just such a surprise. It was so wonderful to see him, play Joshua so beautifully, and such a revelation. Suddenly we saw him in something that, I mean, at least I hadn't seen for a very long time. So just shedding light on the process of a few of them would be really interesting to know.
With Prithvi, it's where I think his process also changes fairly depending on the level of trust that is there. And I think he was very trusting in terms of what I wanted to shape the character into, and he would really go with that. He would allow me into certain areas, and it not once would he come to the monitor and take a look even. So unless I said, can you come and take a look? So it's that level of trust, and
Trust.
I really appreciate that, because that's not always how it is. And in a film like Koode, it takes that. So I think he responded to that, and he's someone that one really needs to gain the confidence of. So he does not rehearse. Absolutely, will not workshop, will not rehearse, nothing. So he has
Wow.
to just come there and do it, and that's how he functions. And I think that works for him. That works for him. So it's about finding those ways. It's like when you're mountaineering, you need to find those crevices where you can get your hand on. So it's almost
Your
like
grip.
yes, yes. So I think with him, involving him in the pre-production, sharing what you're doing with him, and all that really makes him feel confident, and makes him be able to relate to this world that you're in. And I think that works with him. Then you wanted to know about Parvati. With Parvati, she's this Nazi prepper. She's uh, she will go all out. So it's she invests so much in the prepping for her character that even I trust her with even the smallest scene. I have to just I think it was one of the reviews which said she can turn even a one note into a sonata.
Yes.
I think that's a very good way of describing her, because even with a very little thing, she gives it a lot of depth. It's because of that work she puts into it. So I think with Parvati, that is a very specific process. For Bangalore Days, she actually asked for a wheelchair way before the shoot, and production was wondering why she even asking for a wheelchair. She insisted a wheelchair be delivered home, and she went around a whole day or 2 days or something in the wheelchair just to know what it would be like to be in a home in a wheelchair and access everything by wheelchair. So she goes into that kind of very very dedicated work, which that is her process. And she likes receiving. I end up sharing pictures, poetry, writings, music, everything with my actors, and she revels in that. So it that's how it works for her. For Fahad, I think it was a lot of discussion of the backstory works a lot, I think, for Fahad, and he will not respond much. He will just listen. He's a great listener. And finally, at the shoot, in the frame, during his performance, you realize he was listening. He's like that. He's like a sponge. He just absorbs completely. And he is somebody who really gets into character and remains into character when he's with you. He goes into a certain zone, and I think that is what enables him to do the kind of work he's doing. because it requires that. And you can see that depth very, very clearly. So there's a certain a space he gets into, and he remains in that, which makes it easy to access. Once you're in there, just staying in there. So then you tell him anything, and he will always be that person. I remember with Das, I always had this thing that Das was very honorable. He was very noble. There's that thing about him, and that would reflect in his body language, the way he held himself and how he dealt with all the characters. And between Das and Aju, there's certain kind of chemistry. And Aju's got this slightly more flippant energy and everything. But Das is always this sort of, there's a certain way he holds himself. And I think that doesn't have to be briefed to Fahad at that moment. He's just in that space.
You get that.
Yeah, he's that. Nivin is someone who works with a minute-to-minute briefing. It's crazy. His energy is this bubbly energy, and he has this. I don't like to call it a problem, but right in the middle of take or just before the take, he will find something which amuses him, and he will burst into giggles. And maybe a serious scene, it may be anything. And I've had like my DP walk out of set saying, let him laugh. The only thing was that the person giggling after Nivin would be me. So, okay. But Nivin is like that. He's full of that bubbly energy. And so I remember there was one scene we had to do, and I would stop every time. It was that scene where they're playing cards on the bed the night before the wedding, and I would stop, would cut and go to him and say, maybe like this. And then he tells me, you can talk to me during the take, it's okay. And like, okay, talk to you during the take.
What does that mean?
So then, and you have a camera moving in a circular track, the other actors are performing, all it is happening at the same time. So I am literally talking to him through the take, and he's just doing it on the wall. He's just going on. So it's so different from everybody else's process. But again, he really gets into that. And then he loves it. He loves it when you give him these little things to say and to think. And the last minute adjustments, he loves that. He likes responding to that. So, it's great. And these little things, he'll come and say, can I just do this? He gets very excited about that little bit that, I'll add. Can I just add this little thing? He's like that. Dulquer is very different in terms of Dulquer's full of doubts. What is this right? Am I doing this? Okay, am I not doing that? But why am I doing this? There's so many doubts throughout, and you just literally gather him and calm him and say, it's fine. You're doing it.
Don't worry.
It's okay. And then he's like, are you sure? Even after all of that. and during the take, he will just give it his own. He is not conscious or mindful about where the camera is or nothing. He will just give it his all, and then it's up to you to do what you want with it. That's his nature. So each of them is completely different from the other, and that is I remember during Bangalore Days, he had this briefing of that he's a slightly rough guy, and he's not like the others, and he kept coming back and saying, I'm laughing all the time. Isn't that weird? Why am I laughing so much if I'm this kind of rough kind of guy? And I kept telling him, but you're with your cousins. You're not like that with them. And then finally, when he saw it, he got it that it was working in a certain way. It's that's his process. That's his thing. And I think he also responds a lot to the spontaneous energy. If you prep him to death, it's really not great. And he can really get into character. The guy who everybody thought was shy. Dulquer is known for being a very gentleman kind of person. On the sets of Bangalore Days, he was pulling pranks on everyone. He would steal the AD's walkie-talkie and issue instructions as if he was an AD, and everybody's going off in different directions. Who is giving this instruction on the walkie? And he was really playing the fool. He just became Aju. So that's I think they all just really just get into that, and that's lovely.
I really, I laughed so much when that scene came where they're asking Nivin that who's your dream girl, and Nivin describes and ends with, and she should call me Chetta. I was like, who's put this in? This is just fab. Anjali, I don't know whether this is true or not, but before I open the house out to questions, I was really floored by, I mean, of course, I love your work, but I was really floored by Koode. And this is just my own personal assessment. If I was to just put your work, in a chronological order, I feel that Koode, A, had a lot of silence, and had the same empathy and the same tender moments that are there in your film. The same authenticity, but somehow I felt that some of the warm filters um, were out. There was some pushing of the envelope, some harder bits that kind of came in. Is that a function of the story that you were telling, or is it a certain evolution, a certain kind of direction your own journey as a filmmaker is going in?
I think I should, I think I want to make films which don't have a Minnie Mouse bow at the end of it. I think I need to move on from there. And if you ask me in Koode, my possibly one of my favorite bits of that film is the opening, where you see Joshua in his workplace in the Middle East. And I remember shooting with these people, real workers in the oil rigs, in those spaces. We did not work with extras. Instead, what we said is, at that time at 5 o'clock, a lot of them were really going away, from work. So we'll just travel in that bus with them. So we jumped in with a camera, and I remember one AD saying to them, "Okay, everybody get ready. Everybody imagine that you've, worked for the whole day and you're all going home." And we all turned around to him and said, "They have worked the whole day and they are going home." Okay, this is who they are. And we have the camera moving, from face to face to face. And those are real faces. And they have stories to tell. And somewhere in there, I think, lies the kind of film I want to make. I don't know where exactly I'm headed from here, but yeah, it's time to let things get a little more realistic. Fun to try different things, and I'm glad with having had the opportunity to do things. But now I'm keen to move into some other spaces too.
I'm looking forward to that, and so are so many people. I can't even begin to tell you. I wanted to talk to you about WCC, which is, but I think I'll have to organize a separate panel for that because I've already gone on and on. They're wonderful, wonderful people who've joined us, who are on the session with us, and I really, really need to give them the opportunity to talk to you. So can I request everybody to kind of put on their cameras? Please do that, guys, so that we can begin the Q&A. There they are.
Hi, everybody.
Can we unmute Andrea, Tanvi, Sunil, please?
Hi, good evening.
Hi, Andrea. How are you? Go for it.
Yeah, so I had a question to you. Just first of all, I'd like to say that I'm a really big fan of the cinema that you create, and thank you, Smriti, for doing DialMForFilms and for bringing us all together on this platform. I'm a film student. I study film in Mumbai, and I'm someone who's raised on a lot of Hindi commercial cinema, despite being a Tamilian. So I understand the diaspora and the whole thing that we spoke about in the first half. But my question to you is, in a world where commercial cinema is usually deemed as brainless, finding Bangalore Days and Koode was, it sort of changed how I perceived it. So as a creator, how do you personally define what commercial cinema is, and how would you like to see it change in the future?
Thank you, Andrea, first of all, for watching the films. See, I think at the end of the day, when people talk about commercial films, I think they're talking about films which are, you can't just say commercial, but when it's an artistic film, you're actually making it for one's own artistic voice. Whereas with commercial cinema, I think the intent is to communicate, to connect, to connect with an audience. So in a commercial film, for me, the process is different because you are actually focusing that film towards a certain audience. And so your constant exploration is, how am I connecting with that audience? At every level, whether you're making a shot, whether you're writing a dialogue, whatever it is, how am I connecting to the audience becomes a constant thought. And in that, I respect my audience a lot. And I don't think people give very little credit to commercial cinema, frankly, because I think it has great power to influence. It has, great capacity to reach out and communicate. So the kind of stories one can put across, the kind of characters one can put across, the kind of values one can put across, there's a whole lot of things that, when delivered in a commercial cinema, even if you you smuggle it in certain ways, you can reach a much wider audience, and that potential deserves to be exploited. So one can really work in one's material and find ways to say everything you want to say. It does not mean, see, meaningful things don't always have to be said only in a completely artistic way without saying it in any commercial way. It doesn't have to be. You can find an optimal mix somewhere. I will not claim this is great art, but it is definitely communication. It is definitely connection. And I think for me, connection determines the workings of my film. That is key for me, I would say that.
Thank you. Can we unmute Siddharth Menon, please? Hi, Siddharth. Go for it.
Hi. First of all, thank you so much, Smriti and Yash and Kalpana, for organizing this session. Thank you so much for that. And Ms. Anjali, I had a question with regards to improvisation. It's such that I wanted to understand, how do you incorporate a space or a segue for improvisation in any aspect of filmmaking? While in the scripting stage, is there any, do you for example, I remember you told once about a particular dialogue that Mr. Jagdish Kumar had said about she flowered with, I don't remember the complete dialogue, but I remember there's a particular way that he delivered it, and I think that was completely a pure, a stroke of his stroke of genius by him. So I wanted to understand, how do you kind of make a kind of a space for that in the scripting space, and also by a larger extent, how is it when we say improvisation, we primarily kind of connected to dialogues per se and the character behaving. But in your opinion, do you think that there are other aspects of filmmaking that fall under the purview of improvisation while in the shooting stage?
Yes, thank you, Siddharth. That's a very good question, because I believe improvisation is key, not just in what happens between action and cut, but also in terms of every department that functions. When you give a certain brief to a department that this is what I'm anticipating, this is what I would like, but once you've empowered them with that understanding, they need to have the capacity to come back and surprise you with things which are not on paper. Where they will want to create something in a particular room that you're putting together, that because they know about the characters and they know about the story, they may find something which is great to put in, but you have not told them, I want this particular thing. So that is an improvisation from their end. Now, to me as a filmmaker, it's up to me to utilize that. So I was telling Smriti yesterday that there was something that my art department did which was unanticipated, where it was outside of the brief, but when it gets incorporated within the frame, it becomes, part of the storytelling. So they become collaborators in telling that story. So that kind of improvisation is also very important. So when you're editing, for example, I don't really refer to the script when I'm editing. There is a stage I have between the making the film and the editing where I will sit with, just photographs of what shots are there compared to my script. This is just for me to understand that okay, all these shots are there for me to talk about this scene. But when I'm sitting down on the editing, I'm not going to sit with my script. No, I'm just going to look at my material and tell a story from that, because I don't want to be bound by the script. Maybe the material will give me even further opportunity to improvise. So I should not blind myself by wearing the blinkers of the script at that stage. So I will not say that you should leave room for improvisation in the script, because you should write the script to the best of your ability. I try to, but I don't think we should see the script as the holy grail that cannot be messed around. Just clay. The script will only take you to the springboard. You have to jump off that springboard to make the film. If your film is going to look exactly like your script, then what have you contributed as a director? That is the question. So, that at every stage that improvisation needs to happen. An actor may come and say, okay, I don't feel like doing this. I mean, Prithvi does that a lot. Joshua he won't do this. And at that stage, I can always say, no, he will do it and you will do it. But that is not my way. I would never do that. Because, once I've handed over the baton of the character to the actor, I have to trust that actor. I have to trust his instinct. And he is more Joshua than I am at that stage. When he's saying something, I have to listen carefully. What is he trying to say? Speak to him, find out what is his thought behind it, and try and catch that. And try and direct it another way. Okay, is that how you feel? Then maybe we should try this. Would you like to try that? So I would always ask, would you like to try something? Rather than say, do this. Never. I would only suggest, it's only a nudge. Because they have to walk the talk. So that kind of improvisation every level, not just dialogue, but sometimes they end up questioning the motivation. But why am I doing all of this? Why can't I see sense in this? Then to be able to explain, and if they show you light, it's like we had a workshop once, I remember, with Rajan Khosa in film school, and he told the actors, okay, imagine there's a butterfly going somewhere, and then this one actor said, but it's a pink butterfly, and the rest of the narrative went with that pink butterfly because the actor said it. So you have to trust that actor. So similarly, you have to trust all of your collaborators when they are saying this is what feels that, then listen to them and integrate that into your approach to storytelling. When a camera person sets a frame, they are setting it for a particular reason. So engage in that kind of understanding as to why, and then move that into the storytelling. I would do that.
Thank you, Siddharth. Looking forward to you leaping more now. Can we unmute Stanley Sean Matthews, please?
Hi, Anjali ma'am, and hi, Swati ma'am. Big fan of everything that you do at MAMI. I haven't even missed one in the past 5 years. And coming back to the question, my question is with respect to your debut feature film, Manjadikuru. How was the experience of working with young actors as protagonists as compared to the more experienced actors like Tilagan sir, Rahman sir, Kavyo ma'am, and Urvashi ma'am? How did you approach directing these young actors?
Thank you, Stanley. I like working with children. I really enjoy it actually, because they're far more. How do we say? They have less masks on, and that shows up on screen. You don't need to help them unlearn. That really is helpful. But just to give you an example, it's where while we were doing this, we would say, okay, let's try this, let's try that, play a lot of games, play the fool, get the energy up, and all of that. And then after the first few weeks, the actors came in. And when the actors came in, and then they would perform, and then each of them had their own style. So slowly we had to kind of break it a little bit, and move it all into one particular space. And I'd have these kids, they'd come and sit around me, and then they'd look into the monitor and say, she isn't doing too well, is she? Maybe you should do something about that. It it was amazing to see how they were responding to one another. And that also taught me a lot, because well, with actors who are constantly in the industry and constantly doing work, to get them out of their rhythm is a challenge. So we had a wonderful thing with sync sound. In 2007 we shot with sync sound in Manjadikuru, and all of the actors were thrown because most of them had not worked sync sound. So they had to really learn their lines and know it, and there was no prompting and all of that. So everybody was a little edgy. So there was, Rahman and Rushichi, everybody sitting and learning their lines like students. And whereas the kids knew all their lines, they didn't even have to refer to the paper or anything. So it was a very fresh contrast, and we had, a lovely combination of that, which I think helped benefited the film a lot. So when it comes to the children, the trust is very it's very free flowing. It's there. With the actors, I think a little more prep helps, because so that they can build that trust. But at the end of the day, I think that a certain kind of love and a certain kind of care. When I say love, it's for the character, a certain kind of care that they sense. I think they immediately get. The sensitive actors very quickly get what kind of director you are, and they respond to that. So they'll just, very quickly adjust themselves. That is what you seek. So when Smriti was saying that I need to meet an actor, more than anything, I need to see how this person is responding to me. How am I responding to them? That kind of personal, vibe communication. Do you have that? Not with everyone do you have that. So it's important to have that one-to-one as well. I hope I've answered your question.
Thank you, Stanley. Can we unmute Anaga Sukumaran, please? Anaga, we are just in the process of unmuting you. I'm so sorry. Right now you're on mute, and there you go. Anaga, go for it. Can't hear Anaga. Anjali, can you hear her? No, no.
Hello.
Oh, there she is.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, ma'am. I'm a really huge fan of yours. I've seen all of your movies, and yeah, I'm a bit nervous right now because I'm talking to my dream partner. Actually, I've heard that you love Padmarajan movies a lot, and there are huge things that you take away from him. And I've also heard that you take things from home, like the things you see when you're writing to the film sets, and make use it in your movies. Like we have also seen that, like Kit Kat covers in Manjadikuru and Sulaimani in Ustad Hotel and all that. We have seen like little things that we see around us every day. How do you create that magic in your movies? Like how do you create that magic into that lifeless things?
These things are not really lifeless. They hold meaning for us, right? All these little things in our life, we connect with them. The smallest things, our little toy cars, we associate meaning with them. So I'm only teasing your own memory. I'm only just teasing you to remember a time maybe when you were a child, or when you were a college going person sitting on a bike, flying through the streets of a city. I'm just trying to tease those memories. And when that happens, there's a very strong identification one has with the character. So I end up, hoping that you will like this character as much as we all do. And in those little things, in those little what we think of lifeless, those things lie the texture of our character, of their worlds. This when we prepare a set, one of my favorite parts of filmmaking is when we've prepared somebody's home, and then the actors come into that home. And it's usually they don't come just when they're shooting, they'll drop in before. And I love watching them pottering around, going and touching the things and seeing, and then you notice what they pick up, what they're curious about, and slowly you put that into the narrative. Because that's their way of connecting. They're touching places, they're touching cushions. I remember when we went into I think it was Das Divya house, that Nazria actually went out and looked through the window outside, and she was eager to see what it looks like. So we put that into the film. That's the first thing she does when she's there. So those little things, I think, Be it the windows, be it the little knickknacks, be it the toys, be it, drawings, be it any of these lifeless things, they all add up to make that world of the character. They're all tools for us. So it's when I say a Sulaimani, it is that we all know that the bittersweet, or rather the sour and sweet taste of a Sulaimani, and that is what we have to recollect, what we need to hold on. So those little things matter a lot to me, and I think they do to everybody, isn't it? So yeah, just trying to bring that those little ounces of magic to make something a little more magical.
Thank you, Anaga, for all the nervousness. Great question. Thank you for plugging in. Can we unmute Vishnu Vardhanan, please?
Hi, Anjali ma'am. I'm a great fan. I recently watched Manjadikuru, and it was phenomenal movie. Out of all your movies, I think that was the best as script wise also. So my question to you is: recently in an interview, I saw that you wanted to make God of Small Things. You wanted to adapt it. I'm a big fan of the book, but I like the book for its writing, and as backbone story, it is very tragic, and I'm not able to picture a movie. What made you, to decide that you wanted to adapt God of Small Things, and if you would have adapted it, was it the idea that you wanted to make a faithful adaptation, or take a character or central theme and spin a story around it? If you can share your thoughts.
I'd just like to explain the context in which that comment was made. Someone asked me, is there a book you'd like to adapt? And so I mentioned that, that's a book which it fills you with visuals when we read. It's written so beautifully. The wordplay is just fabulous. And I adore that book completely. So it's important for me to be inspired that much. And that is what I got from the book. I've really not given it much thought about how I would make it or anything. This was just one of those dreams. And I'm sure, for very good reasons, Arundhati Roy has, said that the number of people who bought the book, each one has a movie running in their head. So I'm not going to sell the rights. And I think that's the best reason to not sell the rights. So I don't think I will have to think much about how that film will get made. But yes, it's one of those things that you can daydream about, because it's inspiring material, beautifully inspiring material.
Thank you, Vishnu. I think God of Small Things will have to wait. It's one of my favorite books as well. So Anjali, if you do manage to convince Arundhati, or if we can work out a strategy, let's do that. That brings me to one question that I didn't ask you earlier, but I just want to quickly ask you that before we move on to other questions that everybody has. Is that you said that, you used to write very descriptive sort of scripts. Like it was all there. Like the vision was all there, that this is what happens in the scene. This is what it looks like. And then very slowly, from a very descriptive style, you started to leave space there. You stopped describing it as much as, you earlier did. Anjali, how do you decide how much to describe and how much not to? Because at the end of the day, it is your vision on paper. So how do you take that call when you hold back?
See, the thing is about descriptive writing is also, it's about a sense of control. Even when I wrote for Anwar, that was when I became very conscious about it. Because when you're writing for yourself, you're just putting all your thoughts down, right? And you just think of it like that. But when I was writing for somebody else, initially I started writing exactly how I wanted to write and how I would do it for myself. It literally, moves into black spaces, this happens, that happens. And Anwar was also faithful to, what was written. And that was fine. But then after a certain point in the writing, I said, this is not fair. He may have his own vision of how to do this. And I shouldn't sort of, that's taking away his space. It's not okay. So I stopped doing that. I started pulling back. I started leaving space. And then I realized even when I am directing, that's very good. Because if I have so much described, my constant run and the run of everybody on the directorial team is to achieve what is written on paper. But if not enough is written, I may have a vision in my head, but if not enough is written, if I have that vision, I can speak to my production designer. Okay, this is what I have in mind. I can speak to my DP, collaborating. What do you think? How do we want to do this? But if I've put everything down, then where is the room for everybody else to collaborate? So when I pull myself back and I just leave the tip of the iceberg there, then people can actually come in and plug in their creativity. I think that is much more collaborative to work like that. Oh my God, you have all my notes.
Yes, all the Venn diagrams that have been made.
Please do not. You someone. Okay. Sorry, guys. This is me scratching around, doing all mad things. I shared a bunch with them, and now they're actually putting up everything. This is terrible.
Listen, guys, wait for the module to come out. It'll all be there. You can all see it on the MAMI website. Anjali's like, oh my God, give it back to me. Bad idea to share it.
You will make all the mistakes that I made if you follow any of this.
Can we unmute Prerna Tyagi, please? Prerna, there you go.
I'm sorry. I would begin by thanking Smriti ma'am and the MAMI team for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you.
Ustad Hotel, Bangalore Days and Koode are known for portraying familial relationships in the most authentic ways possible. Being a writer and a director, what is the process of bringing these characters and the relationships between them to life? And moreover, to what extent do personal experiences inspire the writing of a scene?
Thank you, Prerna. That's an interesting question. See, I don't say more than personal experiences. There are personal observations. You sometimes you witness something or you hear of something, and you are interested in certain characters. All of these things sort of sit within you and they germinate, and from that is usually born an idea. Now with most of these stories, that's how it's been. And these things, you may see these things at one point in life, but you may write about it much later. And somewhere, that idea just stays in your head and it evolves. But the whole thing about family, I think I find it very interesting to write about families, because that is a great point of identification that we have. And across cultures, it is also a language that one can speak. Because this is the family unit. I like to say, family is a molecule of society. And actually all the drama you want is there, right then and there. In that unit, to see what dynamics exist, to see how relationships move. This is an area that I find very interesting. In India particularly, we have this concept of nuclear families, bigger families, and even not the traditional family. See, even a band is a family, a football team is a family, a group of bikers is a family. So it's these groups of people and their dynamics. That is the area that really interests me. I think that we have so much room there to play around with things, and like I said, it's a great point of identification, point of entry for the audience. So I'm very happy to tell family stories, because I think there is much that needs to be said, also from perspectives which haven't been explored before.
Thank you, Prerna. Can we unmute Avinash, please? Just 1 second, Avinash. Go for it, Avinash. Hi.
Hi. Anjali ma'am, I have a question regarding drafts. So when you complete your draft and when you start rewriting those drafts, how do you cope up with the judgment factor? Like you lose a judgment after a time, right? So how do you cope up with that? Yeah.
No, you definitely lose judgment after a certain point. And that's when I would like to show my script to somebody else who has not heard of the story or read anything from it. Then they give you a fresh perspective. They're able to sort of do that. But sometimes taking time away also helps. Away from your script and not working on it every day. I think that also improves your judgment, and you start getting out of your story, seeing other things, and then you come back to it, and something fresh also happens. But yes, losing judgment is a very, very real problem, which I think others help. It's like someone gave me an example that a tortoise, if it's ever turned over and you're struggling, not being able to get anywhere, then you need somebody else to come and turn you over so that you can keep walking ahead. It's that kind of thing. So yes, I think you need some external factors who can give you a neutral opinion. That helps.
Thank you, Avinash. Can we unmute Ajay Unni Krishnan, please?
Hi, ma'am. Thank you for the opportunity.
Hi, Ajay. Go for it.
Yeah. So, ma'am, you have a very nuanced approach on gender, relationships, and such things. But when we see now, we see that most movies, like most of your movies, are very emotional, and emotions aren't perfect, right? But we are now living in a society where all movies are critiqued in the socio-political lens. So while you approach a particular script, is there does it affect you, or how do you go about it?
See, there are different kinds of writers. I can tell you about my process. I work from, like I said, a very instinctive place. For me, it needs to ring true to my emotion. I think I prioritize that above all else. And this is also because the socio-political circumstances evolve consistently. And I don't believe a film is made for a particular year only. The film should ring true even 10 years from now, 20 years from now. So at that emotional level, I think that is something that does not really shift too much. But there is, a great significance to the socio-political situations that evolve around us. So besides this, I'm right now more and more tempted to be looking at all of that and reflecting on that. But I do think that I will continue to work from an emotional point of view, but possibly integrate more of that. This is also for us a learning. At the end of the day, as filmmakers, these are the spaces where we can speak our minds also. So it cannot always be that you shirk away from that and you won't speak. There are areas, like I was saying, you smuggle in ideas. People don't realize it, but you're putting your perspective across. So that's also very, very important. So yes, that is a process I think one keeps exploring and arrives at.
Thank you, Ajay. Can we please unmute Ayodhya Bharadwaj, please?
Hi, ma'am.
Hi,
I follow everything what you do with WCC. It is very liberating. I'm a writer, and I have this one question for you. I want to know your writing process regarding characters. Do you come up with years worth of backstories for each character, or do you just jump very quickly into the situation and do the surface action that happened within the story, and later figure out the origins of the character? And I'm very curious about the origin point for Sarah.
Huh. Thanks, Ayodhya. The characters and the story, like I said, are very intertwined. The character is the vehicle through which you're telling the story. So the stages of development for a character for me, I may not, write the full backstory and then start. That doesn't work. I will have a semblance of who the character is. I never make a character note before writing some scenes. I will put the scenes together. And I have a tendency to write a few scenes, just a few. And then the character starts to develop from that. Then you start fleshing it out a bit more. Actually, the stage at which I make character notes is when I have to communicate about this character to a third person. which is, for me, the character is a person in themselves. So, like I said, the actor will start talking about the character. After a point, these characters start telling you about themselves. They will start telling you, no, I will not do that, and I will do this. You may come in the morning and sit in front of your laptop and say, okay, today I'm going to write this scene, but suddenly you have a character standing there saying, no, I'm not going to do that. So, you have to listen to them, I think. And that evolution is not entirely in our control. That will happen as there is a process of it, and it will evolve. So that character notes and the backstory and everything, a lot of it emerges in the writing of the screenplay itself. But to give it deeper thought, that happens for me before I communicate it to yet another person. That's when it happens. But it's very difficult to take these two things away and say, okay, this happens here and this happens here. It may happen at at different times for different scripts. For example, in Koode, Joshua's characters, there is so much of the character there is, and there's only little that happens around him. There is so much of the world which is internal. So there you have to work much more on the character than on the rest of it. It can be the opposite as well. So yeah, it's a very intricately placed thing, and it just sort of evolves. I don't have a set process. I can't say that.
Thank you, Ayodhya. And we are taking the last question, guys. Don't go away because we have to also do a master shot, or my team is going to kill me. So Shekhar Chelli, can we please unmute Shekhar? Go for it, Shekhar.
Yeah, thank you, Smriti ma'am, for the opportunity. So my question is about when you're writing a scene, we are aiming for a certain kind of emotional honesty. And when we go onto the set with all the improvisation, with all the suggestions from the from the crew and everything, how do you sustain that emotional honesty within the chaos?
That is the task, isn't it? To be able to hold on to, it's a thing, Shekhar, which kind of, in my case, I can say, I kind of tune out. Everything else tunes out for me. I'm somebody who is quite shy, actually. I'm not a person who just sort of can walk into any room and just talk to anybody. I'm not that kind of person. But on a film set, you are constantly surrounded by 100 people. But in my case, this tuning out happens. And the only thing which actually stays at the center of it for me is that emotion. Everything else, there can be all kinds of hell breaking loose, but your focus is only on that. I remember during the making of Bangalore Days, we had a crazy amount of challenges, and every evening Anwar would turn up on set and he would say, are things okay? And I would just say, inside the frame, things fine. Because actually, to me, only that matters, right? Everything else, I mean, so much natak happens outside, right? Anyway. So it's not worth investing yourself so much in. But what happens inside frame is holy, because that is what will go into the film. All of this madness outside, nothing will go in. So it is not worth getting very affected by that. It is going to be chaotic no matter what you do. And all kinds of challenges will emerge. But within the frame, are you getting what you want? Actually, that is my only job. To keep my eye on that. Nobody else will be able to do that. I really need to keep my focus on that. And yeah, I think as a director, that everybody has their own way. My way is this: just tune out everything else. Everything else just kind of recedes to the background. And this is the biggest priority.
Thank you so much, Anjali, for giving us so much time. And thank you everyone else for plugging in and staying the course. Of course, for the first time, I feel that I have so many more things to ask that I didn't. This time was not enough. So Anjali, maybe another session is due. But Anjali is like, I'm ready to film.
Maybe another movie is due first.
I didn't want to say that. I was being good. I didn't want to pressurize you. I know you get asked in every interview, are we going to see the next film after 5 years. But listen, I know something really amazing is in the works, and I hope we get to see that soon. Can I request everyone to just look straight into your camera and stay there for around 20 seconds while a master shot is taken? So 1, 2, 3, 4, go guys. Okay, we are done. That was slightly embarrassing, but we have to do this for social media. But thank you guys. Keep on plugging into Dial M for Films. Anjali, again, thank you so much. Have a great evening. Our next session is on the 15th of October with another force of nature, Anupma Chopra. And we're going to be chatting with her about many things. So plug in, spread the word. And thank you so much for your faith in this series. Thank you guys. Have a great evening.
Thank you very much.